Welcome to Wild Ideas Worth Living, a show where we talk to experts who've taken a wild idea and made it a reality so you can too. From people who have sailed around the world to those who've started thriving businesses and even broken records, some of the wildest ideas can lead to the most rewarding adventures. I'm your host, Shelby Stanger, and I hope you enjoy this show. This is episode 18 with rock climbing legend Chris Sharma. This episode was brought to you by Prana. Prana makes kick-ass clothes made to go everywhere you go, whether it's from work, surfing, yoga, the gym, and so much more. They also keep the environment in mind when they make their products, so you can feel good about wearing them. And they sponsor some badass athletes, including Amy Ippoliti, Chris Sharma, and Chris Burkhardt, who've all been on this show. I recently took a pair of pants called the Hallie Pant on an overnight hiking trip. They completely held up, looked good, and made me feel great hiking in them all day long. If you go to prana.com right now, you can get any full-priced item for 20% off when you enter the code WILDIdeas. Chris Sharma is arguably one of the best rock climbers in the world. Originally from Santa Cruz, Chris has climbed and established routes no one has ever climbed before. He started really young, mostly in gyms, and now he lives in Barcelona, Spain with his wife and their baby daughter. He talks about his philosophies to climbing and his philosophies to life. He also talks about deep water soloing, which is mostly what he does today. It's climbing these steep rock faces and cliffs that overlook the water, and he does it all without ropes and harnesses. We talk a lot about the sport, its evolution, living in Spain, what it was like to be a stunt double for the movie Point Break, and so much more. Chris is a living legend. So many people told me they were so excited I got to interview him in person, so I really hope you enjoy this conversation. All right, today we have Chris Sharma at Wild Ideas Worth Living. Chris, thanks so much for coming on and meeting me in San Diego.
Yeah, Shelby, great to be here with you. So
thank you, and thanks
cool.
to JK for letting us use his house.
Absolutely.
And having us over for wine. So if there's some music in the background, we're sort of at a dinner party, actually, which is kind of awesome. But Chris, can you maybe tell us a little bit about why you're actually in San Diego and here? Because you don't even live here anymore. You live in Spain.
Yeah, well, I'm from Santa Cruz, but I'm down here in San Diego, actually going to a athlete summit at Prana tomorrow. Been working with Prana for over 20 years. And it's been one of my main sponsors, and it's really been like my family almost for a long time. So yeah, it's great to be back here and just connect with, so many people. I got here a couple weeks ago. Actually, I've been all over the state and just kind of reconnecting with my roots. So it's good to be back.
That's awesome. Well, I think everybody's pretty excited to see you. Have you been to any of those new rock climbing gyms that have opened up recently?
Yeah, actually, I was just at the Sender One LAX grand opening. So Sender One is a climbing gym that I helped. I was one of the founders about 5 years ago. They just opened their second location in Los Angeles. So I was just there yesterday.
Oh, that's awesome.
Which is, it's been an amazing thing to see the sport kind of blowing up, and in particular through the climbing gyms. And it's just so neat. Climbing's always been this very fringe sport, and we've so many people, including myself, we've all just kind of dedicated our lives for the passion of this, and it's pretty neat to see it kind of being recognized in more of the mainstream. So it's a neat time for our sport for sure.
It's funny, Johnny and I just went to a climbing gym in Oceanside, and it was so nice. It was all open on the beach. They had coffee and kombucha, and it was like no climbing gym I'd ever been to. It's becoming so much more welcoming. So it's really fun to see that take off. Is that happening in other countries or just kind of here?
I think it's happening all over the world for sure. I mean, I'm living in Barcelona now, and we just opened up another climbing gym there. And I think what's happening in the US is a little bit ahead of the curve. I mean, I think that's pretty common with a lot of things, but people have been climbing all over the world, especially in Europe. People have kind of been ahead of the Americans for many years. So it's interesting to see the sport of indoor climbing kind of grow up here first. And now it's we've started a climbing gym in Barcelona and kind of importing this new concept in a way.
That's cool. What's the name of the climbing gym in Barcelona?
Our new gym is called Sharma Climbing. So
Of
it's
course.
like my home gym. It's my wife and I, we started it. It's really
Wow.
like a mom and pop thing, and it's been a cool kind of next step in my evolution as a climber, but also like our our path as a family and everything. Living in Barcelona. And yeah, it's interesting. Climbing, I think, similar to surfing, it's this amazing sport that takes us all over the world. And about 10 years ago, I ended up in Spain, or even a little bit more, and just got into a really good groove. For surfers, it might be like going to the North Shore of Hawaii or Indonesia or somewhere, but for climbers, going to the region of Catalonia in Spain is kind of the epicenter. So I ended up there, actually deep water soloing in Mallorca, and was kind of just like this. I love this place, and ended up kind of making it my home.
Can you tell me, I mean, I'm a little inept when it comes to climbing. I'm a little new, and I know a lot of people listening might, well, I don't know, some people might not know. What is deep water soloing?
So deep water soloing, also known as cycloblock, is a form of climbing where we climb sea cliffs, overhanging sea cliffs. So you climb up to 75 feet up sometimes with no ropes. And because it's overhanging, if you fall, you hit nothing, you just land in the water. Of course, falling from that high up can be kind of dangerous, and it is like a pretty extreme form of climbing. But for me, it's so cool. It really is like bringing all of the different styles of climbing into one, and kind of combining that with the ocean as well. For me, it's super special because I grew up in Santa Cruz. I grew up surfing with my dad, and when I started getting into rock climbing, of course, that took me more towards the mountains. And when I kind of came across this style of climbing, it just everything clicked and kind of gave a whole new resurgence to my motivation for the sport and where I could take things, because it was bringing mixing climbing with the ocean. And in climbing as well, like maybe the ultimate feeling is to climb super high up with no ropes, and just it's a super pure, amazing experience. But if you fall, usually that's it, like you're dead, right?
Yeah, I was going to ask you
And
about
so
that.
the cool thing is with deep water soloing is that you can have that same experience, but if you fall, you're okay.
Are you
that
okay though? I mean, there's got to be times where you're falling pretty far into water.
for sure. Like if you can fall in a bad position, but the main challenge can be getting back onto the wall. It's like sometimes where we're climbing in Mallorca, it's cliff line for miles and miles on either side. So it's yeah, if you fall in and there's really choppy waves or something, then it can be really difficult or almost impossible to get back on the wall. And that's when it could, especially if you're just super exhausted from climbing, you fall in. And it's interesting because you have, of course, so many really talented climbers, but you also need to be kind of a water person to be able to manage this whole other side of deep water soloing. And it's pretty cool. For me, it really is like mixing my two favorite worlds. And that's kind of how I ended up in Spain, actually, because I found that style of climbing and just fell in love with it. And so yeah,
And
it's
then
pretty cool.
did you meet a girl there, or?
So yeah, I met my wife. Her name's Jimena, and we settled in Barcelona. She's actually Venezuelan, but her family's from Barcelona. And so yeah, it's been a new adventure. The last few years we opened up a climbing gym. We started a family. We have a beautiful daughter, and also, I mean, just for me, like living in a city has been a new experience. I've always been more in the mountains, and it's been a new experience for sure living in the city. For me, climbing has always been about being in nature, and it's been cool. It's been kind of open, mind opening and expanding my horizons and just kind of embracing new things. One of the really cool things about that is that, like when you're in a city, that it's like to have a project, just like I have a project when I'm rock climbing. And for us, it was building this climbing gym, which is more than just a place to work out. It's like this, international meeting point for climbers. So as I mentioned, people come from all over the world to come climbing in Spain, and everyone arrives in Barcelona. So this gym that we built is kind of this international meeting point, and it's been really cool, kind of creating that space and getting all these new people into the sport. And it's kind of been this next step for me in my progression of climbing to continue sharing my passion with people, and so yeah, it's been cool, just kind of embracing life, and it's cool all the different places life or for me climbing has taken me. So climbing has taken me all over the world. It brought me into contact with all these amazing people. I mean, like JK here. I mean, so many others. And now all of a sudden I'm in Barcelona. I'm running a business, and all of that has been facilitated through this act of just climbing up a rock. So it's interesting how we can, we can learn so much from anything, right? Just depending on how we look at things.
And you started really young climbing.
I started in 1993 when I was 12. So nowadays that's kind of old, but
interesting.
But back in 1993, there was very few kids doing it, and I was one of the first, first wave of gym climbers actually. So I started climbing in a climbing gym in Santa Cruz called Pacific Edge, and yeah, I mean, I guess the rest is kind of history, right? But that's how I got my start, and it was really different from how most climbers got their start, especially at that moment. Usually it was like, your big brother or your uncle's friend or something takes you to the mountains and teaches you, and it's just a much slower learning curve. And that's why we're seeing so much progression in climbing with younger kids, especially. You have these climbing gyms that are a super controlled environment, and you can just progress really rapidly. So that's kind of maybe how I got ahead of everyone at such a young age. But it's been an amazing journey, and just super grateful, and feel honored and blessed to be in the situation that I'm in.
People speak so highly of you, Chris. Like when I tell people I was going to interview you, they were so excited. Like, that guy's a legend and he's humble. I mean, he is climbing, which is such a great compliment. I have to ask you though, I watched the movie Point Break, and you were one of the main guys, stuntmen in the rock climbing scenes. That was such an incredible scene. I mean, there's a bunch of scenes with rock climbing, and I didn't realize that was you.
Yeah.
What was it like filming that movie?
It was a new experience, as I said, like just embracing new experiences. It was cool. I've done a lot of filming over the years, making climbing films, and this was definitely like a bit of a different story. We filmed at Angel Falls in Venezuela, and it was, I mean, for me, that's really one of the most spectacular places on the planet for rock climbing. And actually, I worked with the director to kind of help select the location where we shot it. I helped train some of the actors as well. And so it was cool kind of from a bunch of different angles to kind of help out with the film. And of course, doing being the stunt double for one of the characters was cool. It's crazy. It was a cool experience. We were flying around in helicopters every day, and
I know a lot of the guys who are in the surf scenes for it, and they just speak so highly of that film. They're like, being in Point Break the budget alone was just awesome.
Yeah.
But it was such a good experience.
It was cool. I mean, for me, the way it all came about, so a very close friend of mine is best friends with the director, and the director, Eric Sincor, he's a very down-to-earth guy, and he wanted to do everything as, accurate and authentic as possible. So he got all of us involved, all the best people from all of their sports, and we all ended up meeting up along the way too, because we were in different scenes where there was these party scenes where all of these people kind of were there. And
I remember that.
It was super cool. I met up with Xavier de la Rue, and then during the premiere met up with a bunch of the surfers like Mark Healy, and it was cool. For me, it was an honor to be a part of that whole thing and kind of just represent my sport on a big platform like that. And I mean, everyone is going to have their opinion about the film, but I'm actually very happy with how the climbing scene was done. And
to me, the climbing scene was probably my favorite. It was amazing.
Cool. It was cool. I mean, it was pretty elaborate what they had to do. I mean, where we filmed it's like a 6-day walk from any civilization. I mean, there's nothing out there. So they brought a Hollywood set into the middle of the wilderness, and everyone was camping in the jungle. So it was pretty unique, and it was all kind of felt family style in a way. So even though it was this huge production, we were all kind of connected, like, I knew the director from this guy, and then all the riggers were friends of mine from different places, and we all kind of, it's really interesting as you go through life and you have all these different connections from friends of friends, and it's amazing how interconnected we all are, and it's pretty neat to see, over the years, and so yeah, it was a cool experience.
I want to talk to you a little bit before I forget. I've heard you meditate and do yoga. I'm just curious what type of meditation you do, what type of yoga you do.
Well, so like I grew up in Santa Cruz. I grew up, my last name Sharma is Sanskrit. I grew up going to school at Mount Madonna Center. My parents were students from Baba Haridas, and that's kind of just the background of my childhood, right? So,
It's a good example of if you raise your kids doing yoga and meditation, they're going to turn out to be a world-class climber or world-class athlete.
But, like whenever someone is maybe going through difficult times in their life, they'll fall back on those different types of traditions, right? And for me, I had a bad injury when I was 17. I had kind of committed my whole life to being a climber. Suddenly I couldn't climb, and it was a very challenging moment in my life, and I kind of really connected with meditation and Buddhism and yoga as well during that time, and so that's definitely like a part of who I am, and I think definitely kind of like altered the course of my career as well. I think it made me, that moment when I had committed everything to be a pro athlete and then I couldn't do it, it really made me see how fragile everything is, and how important it is to kind of like be grounded in and be happy in the right way, I guess, and not just, I don't know, get too caught up in winning or being famous or anything like that. In some ways made me kind of see like the shallowness in all of that. But I think also, coming back, for me, climbing is a very meditative sport. It's a way of connecting with yourself, with other people, with the nature. And, I think all of the experiences that I've had have led me back to climbing as really my way of sharing positive, energy in the world. And so, it's all connected, and that's a big part of who I am growing up. And when I couldn't climb, I definitely like immersed myself in that. And then once I recovered again, climbing in so many ways kind of fulfills that for me.
So do you do yoga every day or meditation every day, or do you just climb?
I mostly just climb, and probably should do more yoga and more meditation, but, I've got my own laziness, sometimes, but
I don't know if you're lazy.
But anyways, climbing, especially now that, it has been a huge source of happiness for my whole life, but
I wanted to see your hands. They don't look totally beat up. They look really nice. Chris has beautiful hands. I thought he was going to have these giant climber hands with tons of calluses. They're pretty big hands. They look really strong, actually, but I was expecting a little rougher hands.
Well, sorry to let you down.
No, you're not letting me down at all. It's awesome. They're really strong, and I just watched a video of you, and you looked super strong and agile, and it's cool. And I just had this vision of you doing yoga every day and stretching and splits, because you can get into these crazy positions, but really you just climb.
Yeah, even with climbing, like my way is not necessarily the recommended way. I don't warm up enough. I don't stretch enough. But for me, it really is like this lifestyle, and it's something I've been doing for so long that it really is it's like second nature for me. So
yeah, the best surfer I know doesn't do anything; he just surfs.
Yeah, so
there might be something to it.
I mean, I think don't necessarily follow that example, but it's interesting for me actually. As I'm 35 now, and not only am I getting a little bit older, but also the level.
I was going to tell you to watch that old comment.
But like the level of like what people are climbing nowadays is so much higher than, 20 years ago. So for me, I'm still trying to push my limits. I'm still trying to to do more difficult things. And I found that I have become more of an athlete. I've become more disciplined and a little more regimented in my recent years.
Is there any ways you eat or?
I try to eat pretty healthy. I try to eat lots of vegetables and oatmeal and fish and take more vitamins these days and stuff like that, because climbing is like a very much it's an interesting sport. It's very much like a martial art. It's very much about really fine-tuning your senses and your body. And yeah, you're fighting gravity, right? So like, you stop climbing for 2 weeks and you really notice the difference. It really is this you fine-tune your body into this machine and it's a cool process. It requires a lot of perfection and yeah, it's cool. Climbing is, and I think it's something that anyone can experience, kind of pushing your limits, whether you're climbing 510 or 515. If people that don't know about those grades, they're just different levels on the scale. But really the experience of attempting something that maybe seems out of your range, that seems, beyond you. And then through this process of kind of failing and working and kind of beating your head against the wall, discovering that you're capable of doing something even harder than you thought. It's really an amazing kind of amazing experience, amazing process. And just kind of, every time you get to the top of a project or a mountain, you realize that you're capable of doing more. And it's all connected with kind of just training and getting stronger and getting more fit, and also your experience.
Was there ever a time where you did fail in life? Or we talk a lot about success on this show, and I think that like part of having a wild idea and living a little wildly sometimes means you kind of go through some failure.
Yeah.
Is there a time that you remember that it really shaped you? Or
well, my life is kind of defined by these different projects that I've had over the years. I've sought out these beautiful rock faces around the world, and these cliffs that are just barely possible, or maybe they almost seem impossible. And yeah, many times I've been kind of confronted with failure, and it's a difficult experience to have. It's very humbling and kind of a very necessary part of the process, actually. Sometimes in order to succeed, you have to kind of confront failure and accept it and kind of let go. And those are those magical moments. It's really interesting. Kind of through each of these different projects that I've had, you go through this phase of seeing something that inspires you, kind of wanting to achieve it. You get attached to that achievement, and somehow that attachment can also create a lot of obstacles in actually achieving it. And, oftentimes it can be very frustrating, and I've fallen sometimes hundreds of times over, the period of during years of just trying one thing over and over again. And it can be really intense, but those are some of the experiences that really you're forced to kind of, learn about yourself and grow as a person, right? And that's kind of the cool thing, is that climbing being my main source of everything in my life, that it can facilitate that type of growth, right? It's not just about winning or something. It really is about all these experiences that you have along the way, and so it's pretty cool.
That is cool. Thanks for sharing that. I think you're really good about not being attached to things, and you have this incredible perspective at a really young age. You can tell your parents must have taught you all these things really young, or I don't know. It's just really refreshing to see. I sort of wanted to talk to you a little bit about being a dad, because that's just a full new adventure that you've had, and wondering if there's been any lessons that from climbing have sort of translated over to the adventure of being a dad.
Well, yeah. So like, it's a crazy new experience in my life, and it's this amazing new chapter. But yeah, as you said, like comparing climbing to being a dad. So like, when you're when you're climbing and you're cheering your friend on, it's like you're like telling them like, focus, like breathe, you got it, like go for it, like come on, you can do it. And when my wife was giving birth, it was like the same thing. I was just like, it was like I was cheering, like rooting her on her sending her project on the rock or something. But yeah, I mean, no, I mean, I'm so just in the middle of it. We're in the thick of,
How old is
our daughter's 9 months old,
9 months? So you are in the thick of it. Are you sleeping yet?
I'm sleeping sometimes, but it's like, it's amazing. Like I'm just so in love with her, and yeah, it gives a lot of perspective to life, and I don't know. It's hard to make any comparisons to climbing, but for me, it's enriched so many aspects of my life, and being a climber as well. Like I feel.
What sort of things from climbing that you've learned have helped you in being a dad?
I mean, the cool thing that I've experienced recently is just that's actually maybe helped my climbing. Being a dad has helped my climbing in a way. Cool. Is that you're just a little bit less attached, Like for me, before my daughter was born, like climbing is just such a source of like, defining who I am as a person, and you put so much importance on that. And so whether things go the right way, you put a lot of, that's really important. And if it goes bad, then you can be really frustrated and bummed out. And so there's a whole kind of psychological side of climbing that for me has changed a lot. It's not the priority anymore, like it's definitely second fiddle to my daughter. And as a result, I go out climbing with a super free state of mind and just so appreciative to get to be outside and go climbing. And there's so much less baggage connected to it, which is interesting, that I feel actually enabled to just maybe even climb harder than in the past, because
that's awesome.
You just kind of just have pure kind of joy going climbing, and much easier to focus, because it's the dream of everyone to do what they love as a profession, right? But when you have, unlimited time to do something, you don't really appreciate that time as well. So, I lived for years with the backdrop of like the best cliffs in the world, and it didn't necessarily make me a better climber. And sometimes, now I'm living in the city and I have a kid and I don't have as much free time. And so I want it more. And when I do get it, I appreciate it so much more. So I think, having distance from things makes you appreciate it. And so anyways.
No, that's a really good answer. I think sometimes when we do what we love, we get attached to it to a point where it can be a little crippling, and you've really maintained a good perspective your whole career. And it's exciting. I've been hearing people saying you've been climbing better than ever. And, and you're not a spring chicken, but you look like super fit. So kind of are still.
Yeah, what's interesting, climbing is a young sport still, and I mean I'm super inspired by people like Kelly Slater that have been able to, perform at such a high level for so long. And I think climbing is similar in a way that you can continue to progress. I think the main thing is to not get injured and to maintain your level. Like in the past, I used to be able to take like a month off climbing and go straight to a climbing competition and win and no problem. And now if I don't climb for a month, I notice it. But yeah, I think there's definitely potential to continue progressing.
I know we don't have a lot of time because actually someone's making dinner right now. So I'm gonna kind of wrap this up. But if you could go back and tell your 15-year-old self one piece of advice, what would you tell him?
I don't know. It's hard. It's a hard one, but there's all sorts of moments in our life that maybe we don't appreciate enough when they're happening, and we're worrying about stupid stuff, and maybe I would say something like that, to just, try to appreciate all the moments, even sometimes when, you're not sure what's going on, but, it's all part of this bigger picture, right? And, when you look back, you're like, that thing that I was worrying about, that was nothing, right?
That's good advice, especially to 15-year-olds.
It's just like, just take it all in and just kind of like roll with it and give it all that you have. And you know,
I was wondering, if you weren't a climber, what would you be doing?
at this point, it's really hard to know what I would be doing, but I think I'm a pretty creative person. So it'd probably be something connected with art or something, somehow. I think for me, climbing and doing first ascents and finding new things in nature to climb on. That's a big part of that, is creating these sculptures, in a way, these interactive sculptures. That's one of the coolest things about finding these pathways up these cliffs. It's like discovering something, and even though the cliff was already there, we're creating this interaction, and it really is this artistic thing. And so for me, that's a big part of my inspiration for climbing. So I think if I wasn't doing that, I'd be doing something like, I mean, being in this house, being in JK's house, he's such a creative guy, and I feel like I can identify with that a lot. Even with like the house that I built, like it just, just having ideas and bringing them into reality, and it's that's something that I've always loved. So
Yeah, we're in a house with some really great art, and even a quote from Einstein on the wall about imagination being more important than knowledge. And it's just a really cool house. Yeah, I was going to ask you a little bit about back to climbing. Is that the part you love best? Is it the aesthetic part, the challenge?
I think it's, like I said, it is the aesthetic. It's all of that process, and it's also this discipline of, for me, like at the beginning, climbing came pretty easy. Like it just it flowed. I was pretty natural at it, and I think in that way, I didn't appreciate it completely. And as I've worked higher and higher towards, climbing more and more difficult things, I've had to work harder and harder at it. And one of the interesting things is the more I've had to put into these projects, the more satisfying they are. So I think it's, working and committing yourself, 100%, and really diving into something that maybe at the beginning seems like beyond you, and it forces you to, improve and perfect yourself. Like, in climbing, it's very cool like that. So I think that's one of the cool things. It forces you to really fine tune all of your senses.
Yeah, it sounds. I mean, I've done very little climbing. I just love it. Like, I'm obsessed now. We're going to
Cool.
the climbing gym every day. Are there any mentors you have, or people that have influenced you?
Absolutely. I've had a lot of great guidance along the way. I mean, JK here, Beaver from Prana has been a super important person in my life. Other climbers like Ron Kalk or Boone Speed, or just different people. I've had a lot of my good friend Andy, my friend Sterling, a lot of different people that I've met along the way that have influenced me. But I'd say, to name a few, those are some
Good
important
names.
people. Yeah.
Any books that you would recommend to others, or books that really helped you over the years, or that you're reading now?
Um, I've definitely read a lot of books about Buddhism. I mean, the Way of the Bodhisattva, the Dhammapada. Those are two books in particular have been important for me. And yeah, I would like to start reading more. Honestly, don't read enough right now.
Is there any advice, if you could fly like an eco-friendly plane around the world and it could read one message to the world right now, what would that message be?
Um, I don't know, just like it's all good. Like, let's just step it down a notch, and you know try to.
That's pretty good advice. Step it down a notch. It's all good. I kind of like that. That's great advice. And we're doing this over some wine, just so you know. Okay, last question. What's sort of next on your bucket list, and where can people find out more about you?
Well, I'm excited for what I'm doing with climbing gyms around the world. That's kind of this new endeavor of mine, but also just in my climbing. I'm continuing all these different projects, trying to push my limits even farther. I'm working on a project in Spain. It's a 1,000-foot wall that is barely possible, and I've been working on it for about 5 years. So hoping to maybe accomplish that this year. Yeah, I mean, I'm just kind of just rolling with it, doing my thing, and just climbing is this thing that I imagine with surfing as well. It's something that you can do for your whole life, and you go through ups and downs and ins and outs, and your relationship with climbing changes as you change as a person, and your experience deepens over the years, and just still super passionate about what I do, and I'm just so grateful and all the people that I get to do it with, and to be able to share what I do with so many people, through the YouTube channel that I've been making films for in the last year, and just through all the different platforms. It's great for me to share what I do with other people. It gives a lot of value for me, like to use what I do to inspire other people.
It's awesome. So it's chrissharma.com, and then you have Instagram at Chris Sharma.
Yeah.
Your YouTube channel is just
Sharma channel.
Sharma channel.
Chris Sharma channel.
We'll find it.
Yeah.
We'll post it in the show notes. Chris, thank you so much.
Yeah.
I really appreciate it. You're awesome. Just a joy to interview and a joy to watch climb. So we'll probably be coming to visit you in Spain.
Yeah,
next.
Please come visit us in Barcelona. Everybody's welcome.
Awesome. Well, thanks again.
Take care.
Thanks so much for listening to the show. I hope you enjoyed it. Afterwards, I got to see some footage of Chris climbing in action, and it is absolutely stunning to watch. If you go to chrissharma.com, he actually has a YouTube channel. You can see him in action. He also has some stunning images on his site. So definitely check him out. Thanks to JK for hosting us. Thanks to Prana for introducing us. Thanks to Chris and his Spanish buddies for coming over and doing the podcast. And thanks to you all for listening to this podcast, for subscribing, and for telling your friends as we are continuing to double every episode. It's quite awesome to watch. Don't forget, wherever you are, some of the best adventures happen when you follow your wildest ideas. We'll see you next week.